When Paul used the word divisions in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, he wasn't describing a disagreement. He was describing something being physically torn apart. And once you see the picture he actually had in mind, this whole passage hits differently. I used to think Paul was just annoyed at a minor disagreement among believers in the church, but the image behind his word choice is far more physical, almost violent, and it changes what he's actually asking the Corinthians to do. Corinth sat at a crossroads, a busy port city sitting on a narrow strip of land where ships, traders, and travelers from every direction in the Mediterranean world passed through constantly. New ideas, new teachers, new rivalries all arrived on every incoming ship. It was also a lively city that loved debate, public speaking contests, competing philosophers, each one with a loyal following. Now imagine that same competitive culture walking straight into a young church, a place that was supposed to run on an entirely different set of values. Members quickly start picking favorite teachers, the way you'd pick a favorite public speaker. I follow Paul. I follow Apollos. I follow Cephas. I follow Christ. 4 camps, 1 church, and Paul gets word of it from believers in Chloe's household. He picks up his pen immediately. Most people read divisions in verse 10 as simply meaning disagreements, like the Corinthians just had a difference of opinion that needed smoothing over. That's a fairly mild picture, but the actual Greek word Paul chose describes something much rougher, not a polite disagreement, but a physical tear. That word is schismata, the word we get schism from. The root, schizo, literally means to tear or split, the same word used elsewhere in the Gospels for a rip in a garment. Paul is describing the church as literal torn fabric, pulled apart at the seams. Now look at katartizo, perfectly joined together. This wasn't originally a church word at all. It's a fishing term used in the Gospels for mending torn nets, the same task fishermen like Peter and John did on the shore of Galilee. Doctors used it for setting a dislocated bone back into place. Paul is picturing a net so torn it can't catch anything, and calling for careful, deliberate repair. The New Testament scholar Spick notes that katartizo carries the sense of restoring something to the exact condition it needs for its actual purpose, not just patched, but functional again. And the torn net isn't the only detail hiding in this verse. There are actually 2 different Greek words tucked into it that most translations flatten into one idea. Paul asks for unity in the same mind, nous, and the same judgment, gnome. Nous is the perceiving part, how you actually see and understand a situation in the first place. Gnome is the resulting opinion, the conclusion you land on once you've thought it through. Paul isn't asking the Corinthians to arrive at the same conclusions by coincidence. He's asking them to start from the same way of seeing things altogether. Even the opening line carries more weight than it looks. Paul asks them to speak the same thing. And that exact phrase was actually a known idiom in classical Greek writing outside the Bible, used specifically to mean being in full agreement. Paul, writing to a city that prided itself on rhetoric and philosophy, reaches for a phrase educated Corinthians would have instantly recognized. He's speaking their own intellectual dialect back to them, showing unity isn't some naive request, it's something their own culture already had a name for. Picture it simply for a second. A fisherman holding a net that's ripped wide open. Every fish he's worked to catch just slips right back out through the tear. That's the exact picture Paul wants the Corinthians staring at. 19th century commentator Charles Ellicott points out that Corinth's location made this almost inevitable. A city constantly filled with new arrivals, already primed to prize competing speakers. The believers were importing a habit the whole city already had. There's a small detail right at the start worth pausing on too. Paul heard about the divisions from Chloe's household. We don't know much about Chloe. She's mentioned only once in the entire New Testament. But scholars generally agree she was likely a business owner whose workers traveled between Ephesus, where Paul was writing from, and Corinth. The report that triggered this letter didn't come from an official leader filing a complaint. It came through ordinary conversation, people simply telling Paul what they'd seen. Unity wasn't monitored from a distance. It reached him through real relationships, through people who cared enough to say something. There's one more detail most people skip past, though it proves how seriously Paul took this problem. In verses 14 through 17, Paul says he's thankful he personally baptized hardly anyone in Corinth, just Crispus and Gaius. Then he remembers the household of Stephanas too. Why would an apostle be glad he didn't baptize more people? Because Paul saw where this was heading. If he'd baptized dozens himself, each one could have become another brick in the wall of a Paul faction, people building their identity around whoever baptized them instead of around Christ. He'd already been guarding against this in his own ministry long before the letter was written. So when Paul lists the four camps, even "I follow Christ" used as an exclusive slogan is still forming a faction. His question in verse 13 cuts through all four equally. Is Christ divided? Paul doesn't stop there. He follows it up with two more, even sharper ones. Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? In the ancient world, being baptized in someone's name wasn't a small phrase. It meant belonging to them, being identified with them, the way Paul later describes believers as baptized into Christ's own death in Romans chapter 6. No human teacher's name was spoken over anyone at their baptism, only Christ's. Paul is reminding them whose name actually marked them as belonging to something in the first place. Think about where you might see this pattern today. A church split around a pastor's preference. A Bible study where certain voices always get favored. A friend group or family where loyalty gets pulled in competing directions. Everyone quietly picking a side without ever naming it out loud. Unity isn't the absence of different personalities. It's the ongoing work of mending what's torn, thread by thread. The same patient, unglamorous work a fisherman does with a torn net long before anyone notices it was ever damaged. So next time you notice a tear starting to form in a church, a friendship, a family, remember, Paul didn't say ignore it. He said mend it. On purpose, together, with the same patience it takes to make something broken useful again. And interestingly, Paul isn't the only New Testament writer who pictures believers as something that can be torn apart. James uses a completely different image, and it may be even more uncomfortable. That's coming next. Go in peace, and go do the mending.